There was some big news that just dropped today with the NBA trade deadline approaching. Giannis Antetokounmpo will likely get traded at this point. ESPN's Shams Charania reported that the team is finally listening to some serious offers for the two-time MVP, and of course, the New York Knicks are going to be front and center of those conversations, and that's what we are going to dive into today. I am your host, Dylan Backer. That is Johnny. This is Fireside Knicks, and let's get right into it. So obviously, with the deadline looming, a bunch of rumors have been circulating about many different players for the New York Knicks. But of course, Giannis Antetokounmpo has been the prime big name that has been out there for them. Now, a lot of the rumors and stuff people have kind of just brushed off as smoke and mirrors, but it seems like now there is finally some actual substance to it, and it seems like it could be any day now before Giannis is playing in a different uniform. The two-time MVP has a storied career with the Milwaukee Bucks. He won a championship with them in 2021. As I said in the opening, he's won MVP 2 times. He's also been all defense many times. He is one of the best players, not just of this current generation, of all time, though. So this is a big name we're talking about. And for the Knicks' sake, if they manage to make a trade for this guy, he immediately becomes arguably the greatest player to ever play for the franchise. And at the very least, he is the best player to play for the franchise since 2000. So this is a big deal we're talking about here. And Johnny, what I want to ask you to kind of kick this off, it seems like now at this point, Giannis will be getting moved, whether it's right now or in the offseason. It seems like he very well might have played his last game as a Buck. So I want to ask you just off rip, do you think the Knicks have a real chance at bringing in Giannis this season?
Yeah, I do. I think there's a real chance. He's a Nick in about a week or so. I do think he's played the last game for the Milwaukee Bucks, whether if he's traded before the end of the season or during the offseason. I think he's played his last game for Milwaukee, and I think the Knicks have a really good chance. Right now, it's still early. There may be some more reports coming out. I think the two teams that will be closest linked with Giannis is going to be the Knicks and the Heat, because two big market teams. I think Giannis would maybe be open to to play with the Heat. They got Spoelstra. Maybe that's enticing for Giannis. It's warm down there. It's a big market. But it's the Knicks, man. It's got to be the Knicks. I think we do have a good chance to acquire Giannis. I think it's a little bit weird and a little bit strange how these Drew Holiday reports came out like 2 days ago. We had Mikal Bridges linked with the Trailblazers, and now this Giannis report's coming out. When there's smoke, there's fire, and I think the Knicks have a really good chance to acquire Giannis. And Dylan, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to just straight up throw it at you. Do you think the Knicks acquire Giannis?
That's a good question because I badly want to say yes, but at the end of the day, I think it's up for grabs for a bunch of different East teams. We have seen reports that it's not just the Knicks who are going to be aggressive. The Heat will be aggressive. The Raptors will probably be aggressive. The Orlando Magic will be aggressive. Hell, even the Detroit Pistons could swoop in and make a deal. Now, that would be a nightmare scenario if a team like that swooped in and took him. But for the Knicks' sake, I think they have a good chance. The problem is with the Knicks is that them themselves don't have a ton of assets to move. They have Cat and they have Mikal Bridges, but in terms of draft capital, they don't have that, right? So in order for them to be able to realistically get them, or get him, excuse me, they would probably have to include a third team. And that is what ties back to, our previous video when I talked about the Drew Holiday rumors that came out, how they can get the Portland Trailblazers involved in that trade to kind of help facilitate a big move to not only bring Giannis to the Mecca, but Drew Holiday as well. The Blazers have reported interest in Mikal Bridges, and if that is in fact true, and they actually do want to make a move for him, then the Knicks can make a deal good enough to where they don't have to sacrifice too much of their depth. They can move on from Cat and his contract. They can move on from Mikal, and then they can get Giannis and Drew Holiday, maybe move on from a bench piece or two, and maybe some of that second round draft capital they have, or even the Wizards pick that they own this year. Whatever it is, they can move some of these assets, not get rid of too much depth, while bringing in reasonable upgrades, like true upgrades here. Because if you replace Cat with Giannis, your team is immediately better, if you ask me. And I'm not even trying to use this episode as a way to rag on Karl-Anthony Towns, but we are seeing over the past week or so that Karl-Anthony Towns' role is becoming more and more and more diminished. His minutes have been going down increasingly over these past few games. We saw even just last night against Sacramento, and then he actually had a solid game against Sacramento. I do want to point that out. He did shoot 5 of 15. He wasn't all that good on that front, but 17 points, 11 rebounds. I'm not just going to dismiss that, but at the same time, he came off the floor, and the Knicks went on the run to pretty much seal the win. Yes, they were winning when he came off the floor. He hit a couple threes that, got them kind of out in front and started the run a little bit, but it really started to take off once he was off the floor and Mitchell Robinson was in his place. And then, of course, in Philadelphia, the game before, they were losing when he was on the floor. They were down by like 3 or something like that. And then the literal moment that he came off the floor, they ripped off a 25-9 run, which ended up being big enough for them to hold on and win because Philadelphia ended up climbing back once Towns came back in. So it's clear that the kind of fit that Towns has on this team is starting to become more and more finicky as time is going on. And I think the Knicks are realizing that. I think Mike Brown is realizing that as well. We saw against Sacramento, he used a lineup of 4 defenders down the stretch alongside Jalen Brunson, and they ended up playing really well, ended up winning the game. That same lineup went on that big run against Philadelphia. So I think that I'm not saying that's going to be the permanent strategy, but it seems like Mike Brown is realizing the strengths and weaknesses to the roster, and I think one of those weaknesses is Cat. And it's unfortunate that that's the case because he was, quite frankly, one of our best players last year, but it's been that way this all season long. It's just been an inconsistent year for him, and the Knicks need to act desperate and act like they want to win a title right now. Like that's what good teams do. That is what aggressive teams do. And I understand there are fans who are worried about it being, perceived as a panic move or, a Carmelo Anthony 2.0 or Andrea Bargnani repeat. I understand those concerns. They're valid concerns for certain when you move a guy like this and, you got to give up so much to bring him in. But this is a different type of player, and this is a different type of situation as well. You put Brunson and Giannis together, that team competes for a championship. I firmly believe that team immediately is the best in the East. The Knicks should be the top seed in the East right now with the way the team is constructed on paper. I do think it's a good team on paper, but they're not playing like that, and they haven't really played like that since December. So I think at this point, we have to realize what the team is currently and realize that upgrades are necessary. And whether they end up, moving on from Giannis or he doesn't get moved at all this season and they end up going for bench upgrades, whatever. They have to do something, though. And if they want to be really, really aggressive and really make the play for going to the finals, making the move for Giannis is the way to go, especially now that he is basically formally available at this point. Maybe he hasn't formally requested a trade. We haven't seen any reports about that, but the Bucks are essentially saying to the rest of the teams, hey, he is available. You want to make an offer? Let's hear it. Maybe we'll like it. Maybe we don't like it, and we'll hold on to him until the summer. But we are listening. So the Knicks need to take this opportunity. And I said this before, and I'm going to say it again. I tweeted this out earlier. If the Knicks miss out on Giannis, this would be one of, if not the biggest, missed opportunities in the history of the franchise. It really would be. You cannot miss this opportunity. If we don't get Giannis and a different East contender gets him, or even a different West contender, whatever it is, and he ends up signing a long-term deal with that team, and he ends up winning a championship or two with that said team, we're going to be looking back on it and kicking ourselves saying, why didn't we trade for Giannis at this point when he wanted to come here? I feel like we kind of already missed an opportunity in the offseason when he outright said he wanted to get traded to the Knicks and only, looked at offers from the Knicks. So with that being said, I really hope they can get it done. But as far as do I think it'll happen, it's really tough for me to say right now because I don't know what the ownership's mindset is. I don't know if they feel like this team right now is good enough to win a title or if they think that they do need to move on from big pieces to, bring them in. It's really tough. And I want to hear your input on that because realistically, I think it's going to be very tough.
Yeah, I think it's going to be close. I think it's, as I said earlier, between the Knicks and the Heat. I don't expect him to go to the Raptors or any team like that. But I will say if the Knicks don't aggressively pursue it, but we think we are going to, but if they don't, that's a huge blunder. As you said, if the Knicks don't get Giannis and say he goes to Miami or you mentioned Detroit, I don't think Detroit will happen, but say he goes to one of those teams, it is the biggest miss in New York Knicks franchise history. But on the flip side, if the Knicks do acquire Giannis, it is probably the biggest and most groundbreaking moment the Knicks have had in their franchise history. Now you could
It'd be
say
a franchise
championship in the
altering
70s.
move.
Yeah, this is like the most groundbreaking moment ever. The Knicks need to get this guy. It's not a panic move. This is, you mentioned Carmelo. I love Carmelo. We all love Carmelo, but let's not compare Giannis and Carmelo. They're two different players. Giannis can come to this franchise right now and be, as you said earlier, the most talented player this franchise has ever seen. And I think that's the truth. He would be the most talented player this franchise has ever seen. And I want to talk about Cat for a second because you did mention him. I don't want to rag on him, but the past 3 games he's played 17 minutes 27 minutes versus the Kings, 16 minutes versus the Sixers, and 20 minutes versus the Nets. And since January 7th versus the Clippers, he only has 2 games shooting 50% or more. That's really, really bad for a center, a guy making $53 million. Yeah, $53 million a year. That's 3 weeks. That's over 3 weeks ago. That is 3 weeks ago. That's actually 21 days ago. He has had 2 games shooting 50% or higher. That's really, really bad. And the role's getting diminished. We saw last night against the Kings, he didn't close with the team. So it seems like Cat is finally kind of falling out of this rotation, and the Knicks need to be all over Giannis. I pause. It sounds weird, but
Right.
the Knicks need to do everything they can to get this guy. And if they don't, I'm going to be sad. I'm going to be very, very sad. But if we do get him, it's probably going to be the best moment as a Knicks fan in my entire life. I know we went to the conference finals last year, but if I see that Shams notification on my phone, that will probably be the happiest I've ever been as a Knicks fan, and maybe even a New York sports fan, because the Yankees, 2009, I was 5 years old. I didn't really understand what was going on. So
I was only 7 for that
moment. Exactly. So the Knicks need to do everything they can for Giannis. And I do think it's a little bit weird that the Drew Holiday rumors came out and, the Mikal Bridges rumors came out. And with regards to the Heat, because I think that team's going to be the biggest competition, they can offer a Tyler Hero, Khalil Ware, and I think they have 2 tradable first-round picks if he were to be traded before the deadline. I think the Knicks can match that with a third team. Tyler Hero, Khalil Ware are good young pieces. Don't get me wrong, but they only have 2 tradable firsts. They have another one, but that has to be traded on draft night, so that can't happen before the deadline. Say the Knicks, get the Blazers on their side. The Knicks can offer a really good package. Say they send Mikal to the Blazers. This is just a rough draft. They don't have a mock trade in front of me, but say they send Cat to the Bucks. They send Deuce to the Bucks. And then the Knicks send whatever trade, because at this point, you're sending every asset you possibly can to the Bucks. And then the Blazers send a 2028 first round pick they have the rights. I'm completely fumbling over my words. Let me rephrase that. The Trailblazers own the 2028 and 2030 Bucks first round picks. They could also acquire the 2029 first round pick, but that depends on the draft order. So right now they own the 2028 and 2030. And if the Bucks want to go into a full-blown tank in those years, it's going to be very, very crucial that they reacquire those picks, because then they could just be as bad as they want. You know what I mean? So if the Knicks get Blazers, if they get the Blazers into this conversation, they've had long time interest in Mikal Bridges. We could send Mikal to the Blazers. This could be a really solid package going back to the Bucks way. And we have leverage in this situation. I really want to emphasize this point, because I see a lot of people online saying, oh, the Knicks can't get him. They don't have a package. He's not going to be sent to like Brooklyn, or I know this is not going to happen, but Utah. Even if, say, Utah has the best draft package, Giannis has a big say in where he's going to go. I need people to understand that. And that's why the Knicks have leverage. The Knicks don't need to have the best offer to acquire Giannis. If this guy is completely firm on going to the Knicks, he doesn't want to go anywhere else, I do think he'll be in New York in a week. Now, I do have some worries that, maybe he'd be open to going to the Heat, but this guy's going to have a real say in where he wants to go. He's going to go to a big market team. So that really does help the Knicks. So yeah, man, this is the biggest week in a really long time for the Knicks. They need to acquire Giannis now. Say you pair up Jalen Brunson and Giannis. That's the best duo in the league. I know you could throw Jamal Murray and Jokic into that conversation, but at that point, we're having the conversation. So that means we're in the conversation. You have, say we get Drew Holiday in the deal. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that would be absolutely insane. You have Jalen Brunson next to Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday is still an incredible point of attack defender. Yeah, the offense has fallen off, but your time to win is now. I don't care what happens in 5 years. You need to win now. So say the Knicks get a Jalen Brunson, Drew Holiday, OG Anunoby, Giannis, and Mitchell Robinson. I mean, come on. That defense is ridiculous because now you have 4 elite defenders next to Jalen Brunson. That's how you curate a championship level squad. And then you have, I don't know if Josh Hart will be in any trade package. I assume maybe a Deuce McBride will be traded if we get Giannis, but now you have flexibility. Say, oh, Mitch is not working. Throw Josh Hart into that starting 5. Giannis can play the 5. I know Giannis didn't win a championship playing the 5 with the Bucks and whatnot, but he really wants to play here. I think he'd be okay playing the 5 for a few games if we need. You have roster flexibility, and you're going to get players in return. It's not going to be just Giannis. Say you get a Bobby Portis in return. The baby Bobby Portis comes back to the Knicks. I'm fine with that. He's still a solid player. I know people will say whatever they want about Bobby Portis. He can put the ball in the net. That's fine coming off the bench. I'm happy with that. So the Knicks need to do everything they can to get Giannis. It needs to happen.
Right. And what I really want to touch on too, because people have been talking about this, the injuries, because people have said that, Giannis has been getting hurt a lot the last few years. And obviously right now he's out for at least 4 to 6 weeks with the calf strain. So, I understand injuries are a legitimate concern. It should not stop the Knicks from making this trade, though. It really shouldn't. And I said that in the last video. I've said that previous times. I'm going to continue to say that. It really shouldn't stop them because this is Giannis we're talking about. This is a guy who's going to completely shift the culture of your franchise if you bring him in. You have to change. We got to be mindful of this, too. You bring in Giannis, it not only changes the culture, it changes the roster, of course. It changes the philosophy of the team because now he immediately becomes your best player. Jalen Brunson's obviously the team's best player right now. You bring in Giannis, it's no longer Brunson's team. It is Giannis's team. And Brunson is the second option, which, maybe to some fans doesn't sound appealing, but it's kind of what you have to take. And in this situation, I absolutely would take that because Giannis is simply a better basketball player than Jalen Brunson. And I also firmly believe that Giannis can help my team win a title. We saw it already. We saw him already do it with Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton as his next 2 options. So now imagine if he had Jalen Brunson and say OG Anunoby or Mikal Bridges, whichever one of them doesn't get moved in the deal, as his second and third options. That's so much better. That's a big improvement. So all in all, as far as Giannis is concerned, we're going to continue to hear rumors day in and day out until the deadline does, in fact, pass, which is in about a week from now. But the Knicks need to get something done. I really think that this is their opportunity to step in and swoop in and make that giant blockbuster deal that they have been longing for. You know what I mean? I think that is something that they really need to end up doing. And that's really all I got to say about that. And I want to give you an opportunity to get any final thoughts out before we do wrap the video up, because I think it's pretty simple at this point. We both want Giannis on this team.
Yeah. So I want to bring up a quote from February of 2024. I wrote it in my article for EmpireSportsMedia.com talking about, this is Giannis talking about Drew Holiday. I would love Drew Holiday in the Knicks, but this is what he said in quotes. This is from February of 2024, so keep that in mind. We traded Drew Holiday. I won't say I didn't like it because Damian Lillard is now my teammate, and with him, we're going to win the championship. But my best friend leaving, who is living 2 minutes away from me, is tough. We won the championship, and we cried together. The Knicks having an interest in Drew Holiday is because of Giannis. I want people to understand that we are not acquiring Drew Holiday if it's by himself, because you'd have to trade Mikal Bridges, a 29-year-old, for Drew Holiday, who's 35 on the slow decline. The Knicks are obviously not going to do that. That's never going to happen. The Knicks having an interest in Drew Holiday is because of Giannis. They are clearly like best friends. You get Drew Holiday with Giannis in New York. Come on, man. Alongside Jalen Brunson, OG, this would be a dream come true. A dream come true. The Knicks need to do it now. Right now. Well, it's Mikal Bridges can't be traded until February 1st. So if Giannis is traded before then, we're kind of screwed. So I hope that Shams notification is February 1st until the deadline. But it needs to happen. It needs to happen. That's all I got to say.
It's really that simple. And like you said, too, about Drew Holiday, I would like Drew Holiday even by himself. I do think he's – I'm sorry, what did you say?
I do want to interrupt real quick about the injury stuff. Giannis, of course, the calf stuff is kind of worrying, sure. But real quick, this guy's been pretty healthy for his size throughout his career. He's played 60-plus games almost every season of his career. So, yeah, the injury concerns are worse. And because of all the Achilles injuries that's happened recently, there is cause to be concerned. But he's never played less than 60 games in his entire career. For a guy who drives to the paint as much, and for his size, 60 plus games every season is awesome. So yeah, the injuries are worrying, but that should never ever stop you from acquiring a player the caliber of Giannis's. And if it does, I'm sorry, that's poor. That's poor work from Leon Rose and whoever. You got to get him.
Yeah, no, I'd have to agree. I mean, if injuries are the reason that you don't end up making the trade, then that's poor management. And same thing
Yeah,
if like Deuce McBride or Josh Hart is the reason you don't make the trade, poor management. This is Giannis
yeah,
we're talking about. Everybody should be on the table. Yeah, like basically anyone not named Brunson should be on the
yeah.
table for a trade like this. And I'm sure the Bucks will even ask about Brunson too. But the Knicks
Mm,
should say no
yeah.
to that. I think the
I
Knicks
mean,
need to. I think the idea of bringing in Giannis would be to pair him with Brunson and not
yeah,
pair him with Cat. So they should kind of give him a side eye on that case. But all in all, regardless, Knicks need to do something about this. You can't have this opportunity be presented in front of you and do nothing about it and sit there with your hands in your pocket. You have to actually do something, make the call, make a move, negotiate with them, figure out what deal you can get. And if Giannis demands a trade to New York, that gives him even more leverage and more leeway to find a way to get a deal done without sacrificing too many pieces. That's really all I got to say, though. I do think this is a good spot to wrap the episode up. We're going to end up probably talking about Giannis again at some point before the trade deadline. So don't be surprised if we come up with another video about that. But we do hope you guys did enjoy this specific one about Giannis with this news just coming out. Let us know what you think about Giannis, Drew Holiday, or any other trade deadline pieces, or anybody that we have discussed today in the comment section below, because we would love to hear what you guys got to say about that. You can follow us on all of our social media platforms. We're on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course this YouTube page that you just watched the video on. Make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. You can also follow me and Johnny's personal Twitter accounts. We will link those in the description. And I'm Dylan Backer. That is Johnny. This is Fireside Knicks. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace out. Let's go Knicks.